Revealed. After surgery, I discovered incredible family betrayal. My son fled to the Caribbean. Emma Callahan steadied her breath as she stared at the hospital ceiling tiles, processing the surreal nature of her imminent surgery. The weight of a lifetime spent caring for others hung heavy. She was a compassionate nurse, adored by the community and trusted by countless families. Yet now she lay vulnerable on the edge of change. A new heart valve would not only change her life, but she clutched at the emerging panic. Would it shift her relationship with Jake, her only son? She had raised him with love, worked late nights to provide for his dreams, yet uncertainty loomed over them both like a dark cloud. In the weeks that followed, as she recuperated in their modest home, Emma felt an unsettling silence invade the kitchen, a once cheerful space filled with laughter. It was a glaring void. Gone were the animated discussions about school, his girlfriend, or future plans. The air crackled with tension as Jake withdrew, retreating into his room with a sullen demeanor. She couldn't shake the gnawing sense that their bond was unraveling. Every morning, the bright sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating their splintering connection. What had gone wrong? As she shuffled through old family photographs in search of a smile that once brightened her heart, she stumbled upon a stash of letters hidden away. The frayed edges felt like the frailty of their relationship. With trembling hands, she unfolded them and felt her world tilt. Jake detailed plans to flee to the Caribbean, lured by the seductive promises of wealth and adventure. The pulse of betrayal raced through her veins, drowning her in anguish. How could her own child, the one she had devoted her life to protect, betray her so profoundly? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days slipped past in agonizing silence as Emma grappled with conflicting emotions. Was it wrong for her to feel betrayed? Shouldn't she support her son's ambitions? Yet the unspoken fear gnawed at her. Could she really let him chase dreams that felt so reckless, so foreign from the values she had instilled in him? Each passing hour intensified her anxiety, wrapping chains of despair around her chest. The kitchen table now stood as a battleground for fractured dreams, the clinking of forks echoing like distant thunder. When the inevitable confrontation arrived, it unraveled like a tragic play. Tension erupted as Emma's anguish spilled over into accusatory words, the heat of their exchange filling every corner of their home. "Do you really think that running away is the answer?" she felt herself shout, desperation clinging to her every word. The stark look on Jake's face revealed his own hurt, and when he snapped back, "Maybe it's the only way to discover who I really am." The fissures in their relationship widened terrifyingly. In the depths of that moment, as the gravity of their struggles loomed large, both mother and son felt the corrosive weight of their aspirations collide. Emma, heart racing, grappled with the terrifying thought. Was her relentless commitment to hard work snuffing out the fire of Jake's youthful dreams? Just as she felt a flicker of understanding draw them closer, Jake reached for his suitcase, casting one last glance back. "I'll be back, Mom." Emma stood paralyzed at the threshold, disbelief washing over her. With one foot in uncertainty and one in raw anguish, she watched Jake step out into the world, leaving her behind with heartache and whispers of hope that haunted her thoughts. Would this separation bring clarity or deepen the fracture in their lives? As the door clicked shut, the echoes of their confrontation reverberated in the stillness, leaving the promise of unresolved tensions hanging palpably in the air. The days turned into a blur for Emma. Her heart, still sore from the recent surgery, felt heavier with each passing moment without Jake. The quiet that invaded their home consumed her. It was an embarrassing irony that as a nurse, she dedicated her life to healing others, but now found herself lost in the chaos of her family. She felt like a patient in her own life, waiting for a doctor who might never arrive. Every morning, she awoke with a mixture of resolve and despair. She had to shift her perspective, to find a way to navigate the shattered landscape of their relationship. In all her years as a caregiver, she had never truly considered what it meant to care for herself emotionally. The realization hit her with a jolt. Perhaps this was not just about Jake's ambitions, but also about her own reinvention. If this fracture had been birthed from her incessant need to legislate every aspect of his life, then maybe it was time to examine her core beliefs and let some of them go. With newfound determination, Emma decided to take action. She began setting small goals for herself that she could measure daily. A quick walk around the block, a new recipe to try, and returning to her favorite pastime, painting. Art had been a sanctuary, a means of expression that she had neglected for too long in favor of responsibility. She delighted in the brushstrokes delicately layered onto canvas, discovering colors and forms that resonated with her current emotional state. Yet even in her moments of joy, a shadow of her relationship with Jake lingered, nudging her consciousness with reminders of their confrontation. One afternoon, after a successful day of painting and reflecting, an idea began to take shape. What if she reached out to Jake? Not with a demand for explanations or an invocation of guilt, but as an invitation to share an experience, one of honesty and vulnerability. Hours later, with her heart pounding, Emma penned a letter, unearthing her fears and her love for him. She expressed not just her sorrow over the rift, but also her eagerness to understand the life he wanted to build for himself. It was a risky move, one that laid her raw emotions bare, but Emma felt it was necessary. Once the letter was sealed, Emma's anxiety peaked. What if he dismissed her? What if he never wrote back? With threads of hope and anxiety intertwined, she decided to place the envelope in their mailbox. The simple act felt monumental, an opening to discourse rather than demand. That evening, as twilight cloaked the sky, Emma sat at the kitchen table, a mixture of anticipation and dread churning in her stomach. She had awakened something darker inside herself during her self-reflection. The fear of being just a figure in Jake's past. She could lose him if she wasn't willing to face her own shortcomings. Would he view her letter as a gentle nudge towards reconciliation, or would it become a symbol of her desperation? After seemingly endless hours of waiting, she heard the soft sound of the mailbox sliding open. Breath held, she rushed outside, heart racing, to find an envelope addressed to her in Jake's handwriting. She paused, the world around her becoming abruptly still as she realized this was their moment of reckoning. The act of opening it felt monumental. Would it carry the seeds of healing or the finality she dreaded? As she unfolded the letter, her heart raced and her thoughts spiraled with a combination of dread and excitement. What lay awaiting her within those lines could either bridge the chasm or solidify their distance. Unwavering, she read the first few words. Her connection with Jake's journey was about to ignite again, and she steeled herself for the truth that awaited. Would it spell a new beginning, or would it herald the deepening of their divides? The uncertainties loomed large, inviting her into an unpredictable terrain of emotions. As the pages unfolded, so did the complexities of their relationship, like petals of a fragile, blooming flower. Emma knew nothing would be easy, but perhaps this was the chance to forge a different bond. What lay ahead could either illuminate a path toward redemption or threaten to entrench her deeper into despair. As she turned to the final lines, the weight of her heart grew heavier, whispering the promise of significant revelations to come. As Emma's eyes roamed over the page, each word began to unravel the fabric of her expectations. Jake's handwriting was familiar, yet laced with a distant formality, as if the emotional intimacy they once shared was slowly being reconstructed from fragments of nostalgia. The opening lines acknowledged her letter, thanking her for her honesty and vulnerability. Emma felt a wave of relief. He was responding, engaging, but the depths of his thoughts were still shrouded in a guarded tone. With each sentence, his reflections pulled her further into the complexities of their life together. He acknowledged the strain that had built between them, and the weight of his own ambitions pressing down like a lead blanket. Yet there was an undercurrent that both exhilarated and unnerved her. Jake expressed a willingness to explore their relationship anew, to meet her on common ground, but he also hinted at the changes he believed were necessary for them to move forward. Emma's chest tightened as she absorbed those phrases, recognizing this was an invitation and a challenge. "It's a new beginning and a tentative step towards healing," she whispered to herself, trying to quell the rising tide of anxiety. She realized how her role had shifted completely. She was no longer just the anchor in their tumultuous sea, but the navigator through uncharted waters. Consciously, she released the breath she had been holding, feeling the ebbs and flows of hope. Yet beneath that flicker of optimism lay the sobering truth of their current realities. Was she ready to support Jake's dreams and the possible shifts in her own life that would entail? In her professional context, she often guided others through painful transitions, but the prospect of rehearsing that role in her personal life left her disoriented. The message concluded with an earnest invitation to meet that weekend. "Let's talk," he wrote simply, yet the weight of those two words felt immensely profound. The potential for a new script in their relationship hung in the balance. That evening, preparing for the meeting consumed her thoughts, turning her focus inward once more. In her usual methodical manner, Emma ran through scenarios in her mind. Should she be open to his ideas about change? What did she need from him? Could she trust him to engage with her as a partner rather than a detached dreamer? As she set aside her paints from earlier, she picked up her notebook, intending to jot down her thoughts. The flickering candlelight illuminated her face and offered comfort in the solitude of the night. In her notes, she began to outline her needs. The nature of her expectations had shifted with the letter, and she could no longer allow herself to cling to resentments. This conversation needed to flourish into understanding, but also delineate boundaries. She had spent years caring for others, often neglecting her own voice. Suddenly, a realization sparked within her. Perhaps the very act of sharing her inner turmoil and resilience could empower Jake, too. If she laid out her needs, perhaps he could find the courage to articulate what he was scared to lose. Their connection, his dreams, or more significantly, the balance of both. Once her notes felt complete, Emma felt a sense of clarity, but also trepidation. A conversation on this scale was bound to reveal not only hopes, but also the daunting uncertainties of their lives. Navigating the labyrinth of emotions between them would require equal parts compassion and tenacity. As the clock ticked toward the weekend, the anticipation bloomed alongside a sense of dread. The path ahead promised both healing and difficult decisions. Emma wondered if they could create a new foundation, or if the building blocks of their past would become yet another barrier. And yet, a new thought flickered in her mind, a question growing bolder with every heartbeat. Would facing the truth lead them to a shared future, or would it unearth past betrayals that threatened to tear them apart once more? That lingering uncertainty haunted her as she prepared for the confrontation ahead, ready to confront not only Jake, but also the shadows of her own heart that had kept her tethered far too long. Emma awoke to the soft glow of dawn breaking through the curtains, the sunlight an unwelcome intrusion on a night that had offered little restful sleep. Thoughts swirled in her mind, tumultuous waves crashing into the shore of her consciousness. Today was not just about a meeting with Jake, it was a reckoning. As she meticulously prepared breakfast, each action felt like a ritual, blending the familiar with the anxiety of the unknown. Stirring the coffee, she recalled their last visit to the cozy cafe downtown, where laughter was punctuated by stolen glances. Now, the very thought of that laugh felt distant, as if it belonged to someone else. The distance between them had grown too vast, yet the possibility of bridging it lingered on the horizon like a mirage. Once dressed, Emma reached for her notebook again, reaffirming her commitment to transparency. The bulleted list she'd created seemed both empowering and daunting, a reflection of her growth, yet also a reminder of her discomfort. Setting her intentions was a crucial first step, yet the real challenge awaited her at their meeting, the confrontation of unspoken fears and long-buried truths. As she left her apartment, Emma felt the weight of her own expectations pressing down on her, a reminder of how far she'd come in her professional life. If she could guide a group through trauma recovery, why did plunging into her personal narrative present such trepidation? Upon arriving at the cafe, she chose a table near the window, allowing the soft sunlight to illuminate her path ahead. Her heart raced at the thought of Jake walking through that door, a familiar figure tinged with uncertainty. Would he see her evolving resolve, or would he only perceive the remnants of their past struggles? Each beat was a reminder of the potential for healing or destruction. She was ready for either. When Jake finally entered, the tension in the air shifted. His presence awakened 1,000 memories, tinged with both comfort and loss. He approached with a tentative smile, the warmth behind it both reassuring and disconcerting. As they settled into the conversation, the initial awkwardness faded, replaced by a deeper awareness of their shared history. "Thank you for meeting me," he began, his eyes scanning her face for answers, as if the connection was still fragile. "Your letter encouraged me to reflect more than I have in a long time," Emma replied, grounding herself in the moment. The conversation flowed, weaving through hurt, aspiration, and the need for clarity. She expressed her desires with a newfound assertiveness, dissecting the complexities of their relationship and openly discussing her needs. As she spoke, a sense of authenticity stitched together the fragmented fabric of their past. Yet, the conversation was not without its upheavals. The deeper they delved into past grievances and aspirations for the future, the more Jake's guarded demeanor surfaced. Moments of silence clung to the air, thickening the space between them as unresolved tensions made their way to the surface. Finally, in a moment of unanticipated clarity, he asked, "But what if my pursuing my dreams means letting you go?" The vulnerability in his voice brought Emma to a halt. Caught off guard, she grappled with her response. Did this mean her fears were warranted? She was faced not only with the potential end of a chapter in their shared story, but the paradox of love intertwined with ambition. Could she balance supporting his dreams while also cultivating her own needs? As they left the cafe, a storm of questions loomed in Emma's heart. Was she prepared to make such sacrifices? Would their evolving identities allow for a shared future, or were they destined to drift apart, each navigating their own paths of success and ambition? With the meeting behind her but uncertainty swirling ahead, Emma turned toward Jake, ready to confront the daunting unknown. What would they uncover about themselves in this process, and how far were they willing to go to reclaim something that felt irrevocably lost? Armed with courage, she took a step forward, determined to face whatever awaited them both. But as she took his hand, a gesture full of hope yet tinged with anxiety, she knew one essential truth. The real conversation was just beginning. What other secrets lay beneath the surface, threatening her newfound sense of self? The sunlight felt almost blinding as Emma stepped onto the street with Jake's hand in hers, no longer just an old connection, but a lifeline they'd both clung to amidst swirling uncertainties. The city pulsed around them, full of life and opportunity, yet her mind was still anchored to their recent conversation. Behind the brief elation she felt in his presence, questions coiled like tightening serpents. What choices lay ahead? As they meandered through the busy streets, exchanging small talk about the weather and the city's latest happenings, Emma's thoughts echoed loudly. Jake's question loomed ominously, its implications gnawing at her core. Would she have to pay the price for his ambitions with her own sense of fulfillment? She turned her focus inward, recognizing that this was not just about Jake. It was about her emerging self. Every step she took resonated with the weight of her own aspirations, some newly discovered, while others had been silenced for far too long. As they wandered toward the riverfront, Emma was struck by a sudden impulse. She needed clarity, not just about her relationship with Jake, but regarding her own path forward. If they were both to grow, it would require more than just reaching out to one another. She needed to reaffirm her own identity. "Let's take a walk by the river," she suggested, directing them away from the cacophony of the streets. The tranquil lapping of water was a welcome backdrop as they settled onto a bench overlooking the flowing currents. She felt the tension diffusing, even as the weight of their conversation pressed heavily in the air. "Emma," Jake began, but she raised her hand, signaling him to pause. They needed to reframe this dialogue, establishing the boundaries of their aspirations. "I think we need to be honest about what we both want. No more playing safe, okay? You want to chase your dreams," she asserted, her voice trembling slightly but filled with newfound determination. "But I have dreams too, Jake. It's time I own them." The look in his eyes shifted, intrigue mixed with concern. "What do you truly want?" His inquiry served as an invitation, and it allowed something inside her to ignite. "I want to build the kind of life where I can merge my passions with work, where I don't have to choose between love and my mission," she replied. The words flowed more freely than they ever had, each syllable a step toward reclaiming her narrative. "Emma, it's not that simple," he countered gently, but she could see the reflection of emotions battling within him. "Of course it's not," she countered, "but I've been doing the simple thing for too long, just accepting what comes my way. If I don't start laying the groundwork for my future, I'll lose myself completely." Her declaration surprised her, revealing a latent conviction that had simmered beneath the surface for far too long. The realization flooded her with both trepidation and exhilaration. The seismic shift it invoked felt disorienting yet necessary. There could be no growth without confrontation. Jake leaned closer, a series of emotions flickering across his face, the confusion and fear coalescing into an unspoken unity between them. "Then let's build together," he breathed, his grip on her hand tightening. "I want to support you. I want us to support each other." He leaned in, and for a moment their past flickered before them like so many shadows, yet it was the future that began to take shape in their minds. Uncertainty still lingered, but she felt a swell of possessiveness over her ambitions. "If we're going to do this, we have to be bold," she replied, voice firmer now. "No retreading old ground. We should make a list, like I did this morning. What do we want? What sacrifices are we willing to make? It's important to know our limits and our dreams." As they began to sketch out their intentions in the sand with a stick, Emma felt a wave of empowerment wash over her. Each line she drew served as an affirmation, casting her aspirations with clarity into the universe. But as the last letter faded into the currents, so did her previous reservations. "What if I really push to start my own counseling practice, but it means relocating?" she asked, heart racing at the honesty of the thought. The time has come to face those challenges together and figure things out along the way. The knot in her stomach tightened. What if commitments pulled them apart? Could they navigate the growing distance or risk losing it all? Emma searched Jake's eyes, realizing they were just at the cusp of a much deeper exploration. How much were they each willing to sacrifice, and could their ambitions harmonize? But as the river's current swayed the branches overhead, her mind echoed with trepidation. The real journey was winding ahead, filled with potential revelations that would either bind them closer or pull them apart irrevocably. Would they find the answers or succumb to the dark doubts lurking just beyond the horizon? The river flowed steadily, a stark contrast to the tempest brewing within Emma. Every drop glimmered with the promise of possibility, yet she felt herself standing on the edge of the unknown, poised to dive into both forgiveness and confrontation. This was not merely about the dream of a counseling practice. It was about her journey towards self-realization. The dream blurred with fear, the decision pregnant with apprehension. "Relocating would mean I'd have to let go," Emma whispered, the words hesitant yet resolute. "Let go of what I know, the safety net of familiarity. The thought of uprooting her life filled her with both longing and dread. Jake's gaze remained fixed on her, encouraging yet penetrating. "But isn't that where the adventure lies?" he challenged gently. "Isn't that the crux of truly living?" His question hung in the air, and within her an internal struggle unfurled. Adventure could be a double-edged sword, cutting away the anchors she had clung to. But what if those very anchors were holding her back from flying? Adventure, she mused, as if tasting the word, comes with risks. Life itself is a risk, he pointed out with a resigned smile, a hint of admiration mixed with concern. But think about it. What holds more weight, fear or your dreams? The heartbeat of the city throbbed in the background, and for a fleeting moment, she could almost envision herself behind an office desk, practicing therapy, guiding others to freedom, just as she was trying to liberate herself. But where would that desk be? The roots of her identity, her family, her friends, everything predictable, seemed to tether her to this place. As the sun continued its slow descent towards the horizon, casting warm hues upon the water, she exhaled deeply. "You're right," she confessed. "But I've always feared abandoning the familiar. What if I fail?" "Fear is primal," Jake replied softly, his voice steady. "But imagine waking up each day, doing what inspires you. The fear of mediocrity has to be greater than the fear of failure, right? And if we're both taking this leap, we can't let self-doubt dictate our journey." She contemplated his perspective. It validated her desire, yet also loomed dauntingly. With every ounce of her being, she wanted to accept that leap, but the shadows of her insecurities cast doubt upon the sunlight, illuminating their ambition. "What if I flourish, but you don't?" Emma asked, the words slipping out before she could rein them in. The flicker in Jake's eyes signified recognition of her deeper fears. They were connected through shared ambitions, but she worried their paths could deviate into a chasm she wouldn't be able to cross. "We'll make space for each other," he reassured her. "Growth means supporting each other's dreams, even if they pull us into different directions." And within that moment, Emma realized that growth was not about constant togetherness. It could mean separate journeys that forged a stronger bond through trust and understanding. As they sat in the fading daylight, the realization dawned on her like the evening star emerging in the darkening sky. She no longer wanted to feel like she was soaring while others were stuck in stasis. If there were to be any risk, it had to be a collective journey forward, even if it meant the potential for heart-wrenching changes. But what if it leads to our destruction? Emma's heart raced as she questioned the fragility of their connection. The breeze carried a sense of resolve when Jake responded. "Destruction can be the soil for new growth, right? We won't know unless we try." His words resonated, igniting a flame of hope within her. Could they really forge ahead with both clarity and intention? She felt a shift. She was no longer merely pondering dreams. She was ready to define what they meant. "Okay," Emma determined, her voice steadied by courage. "We'll create a plan. Let's build this foundation together, establish some clear guidelines on what success looks like for both of us, and if we falter, we'll confront it head-on." As she spoke, a newfound sense of empowerment surged through her every word. There was a growing awareness in her, a shift that felt almost palpable. The promise of action stood before them like an open door. Yet as the sun dipped below the horizon, her heart raced at the thought of the daunting first steps ahead. What were these guidelines they would outline? Would they find that harmony they both desired in their simultaneous pursuits? The river continued its relentless journey past the bench, its surface shimmering with the last light of day. Emma could feel the current of change swelling within her, but uncertainty still lingered in its depths. With this foundation they were about to cement, would they strengthen one another? Or was there a risk that one would falter and the other would drown in the weight of unfulfilled expectations? As these questions loomed large, she could sense a pivotal moment approaching, raw and electrifying, one that would shape not just her professional path, but the very fabric of her relationship with Jake. How strong would they need to be when the currents of life pulled them in opposing directions? How would they navigate the depths of their dreams once the future unfurled? The following afternoon, Emma found herself at her cluttered dining room table, surrounded by a chaotic mix of sticky notes and scattered journals. Each note represented either a fear she hoped to overcome or a vibrant dream she was determined to pursue. She squeezed her eyes shut, her mind racing. Could she truly transform her passion for helping others into a thriving counseling practice? The sensation of dread crept its way back in, a whisper urging her to reconsider. Would she be able to make a genuine impact? Sifting through her thoughts, she lifted her head to Jake, who was arranging takeaway containers from the corner of the table. He mirrored her uncertainty as he tried to pin down his own plan. "What does success look like for you?" Emma asked, determined to uncover the elements that needed to be present in their ambitious plans. His brow furrowed, and he paused, pushing aside remnants of their improvised lunch. "I don't know yet. Maybe a stable career where I help others think critically about their choices." His pause felt heavy. "But part of me questions whether I can actually achieve something meaningful." Emma recognized the vulnerability lying just beneath the surface of his words. She could feel a familiar sting, self-doubt nestled in the corners of their aspirations. "If we're to support each other, we should share our insecurities. What's the worst that could happen?" He hesitated before exhaling slowly. "What if we spend months planning, and then, I realize I'm not cut out for this after all?" Doubt undressed itself before her, naked and vulnerable. They were both drawn to the fear of inadequacy that had shadowed them through years of complacency. Emma recalled the feelings of helplessness when confronted with clients who resisted her guidance. Would their dreams crumble beneath the weight of disappointment? "We've held on to these fears for so long," she said softly. "What if we let them go instead? We could frame this as a shared exploration rather than a misguided test of worth." Jake nodded, the affirmation softening the tension between them, and a flicker of hope ignited once more. "Okay, let's convert this into a series of actionable steps." They spent hours discussing ideas and values, gradually laying out a framework for both their journeys. Emma mapped out her vision of creating an inclusive, calming environment in her practice, where every client would feel accepted and empowered. Jake spoke of crafting workshops that challenged preconceptions through innovative critical thinking exercises. Every idea birthed further inspiration, forming an intricate quilt of their dreams. Yet beneath the exhilaration loomed uncertainty, threads of fear weaving tightly into their excitement. They were creating a vision of their respective futures, but the specter of potential failure loomed large, an unwelcome entity lingering just behind the bright prospects. "Should I consider starting a blog?" Emma mused, the suggestion lodged in her throat like a fearsome lump. "It could help me articulate my thoughts and establish credibility with potential clients." He grinned, the idea sparking his own creativity. "Yes, your insights could benefit others, and the feedback might help clarify your thinking too. What's holding you back?" The question rang through the air like a challenge, and she faltered. Why was she so conflicted about taking this first step? The intimacy of sharing herself with a broader audience terrified her. "I guess I'm afraid of exposing myself and then failing," she admitted. Her thoughts cascaded. What if they didn't appreciate her insights? What if her vulnerabilities opened her to criticism? Remember, the altar of growth is humility. It might feel like laying bare our souls, but let's not forget everyone feels insecure and imperfect. His voice was steady, imbued with a mixture of determination and understanding. A tangle of emotion stirred within Emma, rearing up at the thought of bravery in imperfection. "So, our foundation of guidelines won't just cover what our successes would look like, but also how we handle failure, right?" He nodded, the expression on his face marking an unspoken revelation. It was not just about achieving a successful outcome. It was about the way they navigated the inevitable turmoil that came from pursuing their dreams. And we need to establish accountability, even when our paths diverge. The realization dawned on her like a sharp light piercing through a cloud of doubt. If they were not just each other's support, but brave anchors in uncertainty, they could find strength in their shared vulnerability. But as they began to solidify their foundation, Emma felt a sense of foreboding tightening around her chest. What unforeseen challenges might lie ahead? What if they faltered in their commitment, unable to navigate the depths of their aspirations together? The strength of their connection would soon be tested, and doubts still gripped her heart. In the midst of ticking clocks and scribbled dreams, she could only wonder, would they find clarity, or were they merely tying themselves together for a fall into chaos? Would their unpadded steps toward ambition crumble under the weight of their conflicts, or would they rise, united and triumphant against the tide of their fears? With questions tightening like a vice, Emma recognized that clarity was only the first of many formidable tests on this path they had chosen. Life had a way of unveiling unexpected layers, and she sensed their most profound revelations were yet to come. Morning found Emma a few days later, her eyes adopting a weary determination as she sat at her desk, staring at the blank page glowing on her laptop. Words had become elusive, retreating at the most inconvenient moments. She had drafted the intentions for her blog countless times, but an invisible barrier seemed to hold her back. Each fleeting thought of sharing her journey felt like a plunge into icy waters, the chill of vulnerability gnawing at her resolve. Jake's words echoed in her mind. The altar of growth is humility. But could she truly embrace that? Fear prickled at her skin, a gnawing voice questioning her worthiness to offer insights into the struggles she had yet to completely unravel. The very act of writing felt like an invitation for judgment, an unfiltered window into her insecurities, her struggles, and ultimately, her humanity. She leaned back, unmoored by self-doubt, and reached for a sticky note pinned to her vision board. "What if they don't want to hear from me?" she had written, the ink still fresh, a reminder of her apprehension. If she exposed her thoughts, would they be enough? Would anyone care? As if sensing her turmoil, her phone chimed with a message from Jake. "Ready to write together? Let's shake the nerves." A faint smile tugged at her lips. His unwavering support had been a solace, yet it also magnified the daunting prospect of failure looming on the horizon. "Sure," she texted back, a rush of annoyance prompting her to type. "But I still feel hesitant about it all. What if neither of us hits the mark?" He replied almost immediately. "The point is to start. We both have something to say. The world needs it. Plus, the only failure is not trying at all." As she read his words, an ember of determination flickered inside her. Focusing was essential. She needed to reaffirm her purpose. Emma grabbed her notebook, the pages worn and filled with her scattered thoughts, and began to pry open the emotional vaults she had kept secured for so long. What if writing, rather than being a test, could become a platform for transformation? Each word could act as a stepping stone, a channel to communicate not just her knowledge, but also her growth. Emma felt the threads of clarity weaving through her, illuminating the potential impact her words could have on others facing their uncertainties. She closed her eyes and pictured her ideal audience. Those who, like her, navigated the intricate labyrinth of fear and aspiration. Wouldn't they benefit from hearing her story, the uncertainty, the breakthroughs? Suddenly, the act of blogging gained new meaning. It was no longer merely sharing thoughts. It was about carving a path for others, guiding them through the fog of self-doubt. The moment she connected that intention to her personal narrative, she felt an urge rising to harness her vulnerability rather than shy away from it. Emma quickly opened her laptop and began typing. She focused on her journey, her initial feelings of being lost, her gradual acceptance of imperfection, and the realization that others were walking similar paths. As the words spilled onto the screen, her heart raced with both excitement and fear. What would her insights lead to? Would anyone resonate with her honesty? Her fingers hesitated above the keyboard as doubt clawed at her thoughts. What if she shared an experience that opened a floodgate for criticism? But then she remembered Jake's unwavering belief, a reminder of the mutual commitment they had entered. They had both pledged to navigate the unknown, bolstering each other's dreams and confronting the demons lurking in the shadows. With renewed fervor, Emma pushed through her reservations, drafting a piece that was deeply personal and raw. She didn't wield a facade of perfection, but rather embraced her equal share of flaws. As she hit save, an awareness seeped into her consciousness. Vulnerability was a double-edged sword, one that could cut both ways but also bring about profound connections. Later that evening, Jake arrived for their writing session. His animated presence filled the room with infectious energy, yet Emma sensed a lurking weight beneath his enthusiasm. They exchanged drafts, and she held her breath as he read hers. Would he understand? Would he sense her apprehensions woven into the prose? Emma, this is powerful. His eyes sparkled with sincerity. You're laying your heart bare here. This could really resonate. His approval encouraged her, yet as they discussed their pieces, she sensed an undertone of doubt in his voice. Jake was grappling with his own fears of exposure, leading to an unspoken tension billowing in the space between them. What about you? She pressed, nudging him to share. What's holding you back from embracing this as fully as you could? For a moment, his gaze dropped, the weight of reflection pressing upon him. It's just that I fear putting something out there that isn't polished. What if it doesn't live up to the standards I hold myself to? As he spoke, Emma felt something shift in the air, a palpable understanding shaping their shared journey. They were both dancing on the precipice of discovery, unsure if they would soar or falter. Could the act of revealing their authentic selves fortify their connection, or would the vulnerabilities draw them apart? With worldviews expanding and stakes rising, Emma held her breath. Would they emerge from this threshold unified, empowered by their honesty, or would the exposure compromise their fragile aspirations? Emma felt that this was just the beginning, a delicate thread ready to unravel into a tapestry of shared truths. But the question loomed. How would they handle the unmasking? How would they confront the fears hiding just beneath the surface? The following weeks flowed in a delicate dance between anticipation and anxiety. Emma found herself drawn to her laptop each morning, the weight of her intentions heavy yet invigorating. Each keystroke was a deliberate confrontation of her fears, a steady unearthing of truths that had been buried too long. She had begun to see her writing not just as an act of personal expression, but as a risky venture into a space where she could lead others through similar shadows. Yet the deeper she immersed herself in this exploration, the more she felt the sharp edges of vulnerability. What emerged on her screen was a testament to her struggle, her fears, and her growth. But as she prepared to share these new pieces with Jake, unease coiled around her resolve. Was this rawness too much? Would revealing her battles undermine her credibility, or worse, invite mockery? She often replayed their last conversation in her mind, grappling with Jake's admission of anxiety. The knowledge that he too felt the weight of exposure nudged at Emma's conscience. It was astonishing. They were yet in the stage of crafting their voices, grappling with their nascent identities as writers while wrestling with inner demons. The camaraderie of struggle had drawn them together, yet it seemed that the very act meant to unite them might also tear at the fragile threads of their bond. As the manuscript of her blog grew more coherent, Emma decided it was time for a reckoning. They agreed to meet for their weekly writing session at the small cafe that had become their sanctuary. It was a place filled with the hum of conversation and the scent of freshly brewed coffee. Here, she could safely navigate her introspections and heed the pulse of their unspoken competition. Seated at their usual corner table, Emma's palms felt slippery as she pushed a steaming cup of coffee towards Jake. "Have you considered what you want to share?" she ventured, her voice laced with a mix of eagerness and dread. Jake stirred his drink, staring intently at the swirling liquid as if seeking answers in the depths of the mug. "I think I'm ready to be more honest," he said finally, eyes shifting to meet hers. "But there's a lot I still hold back. Each time I write, it feels like I'm standing at the edge of a cliff, ready to jump but terrified of falling." "You're not alone in that fear," Emma replied, her breath catching slightly. "But I think the risk is worth it, the chance to resonate with someone else who's feeling the same way. It's like a lifeline." He nodded thoughtfully, considering her words deeply. The cafe buzzed around them, but they existed in a private bubble of contemplation. Emma could sense that they both stood on the brink of significant choice, not just as individuals, but as a duo seeking to illuminate the shadows. "Maybe we can help each other free ourselves," she proposed, feeling a spark of hope shift the dynamic. "What if we held each other accountable, set tiny goals each week to share what scares us the most? I'd like to hear you lay it all out there without trying to polish it." Jake lifted his gaze, a spark of curiosity brightening his features. "What if we set the deadline for when we feel the most anxious about it? Share something, anything, right before we present it to the public. It could help us face our fears directly." A thrill shot through Emma. This framework felt like a structure built from vulnerability. The idea of acknowledging their anxiety as a powerful catalyst struck a chord within her. Her fingers itched with excitement at the thought of writing pieces that would challenge not only their skills, but their willingness to confront harsh realities. This was a pact forged in fear, yet laced with courage. They would both leap from the cliff but share the experience, and perhaps they would discover that they could soar together. As the conversation unfolded, Emma found herself teetering on the precipice of an uncharted territory, a realm where authenticity thrived amidst vulnerability. But that realization also beckoned a new wave of uncertainty. How expansive would their honesty reach? And what if the most profound truths they uncovered became the very things that threatened their newfound connection? The following day, Emma sat down to write. But rather than crafting yet another personal narrative, she found her mind swirling with the unknowns looming on the horizon. Would they be brave enough to delve into the most painful truths lurking in the depths? With her heart thudding, she hesitated and hit pause, realizing that the commitment to unveil their vulnerabilities could unravel much more than writing. It could unravel the very essence of their friendship. As she began to type, each word felt like an act of defiance against her fears, teasing out answers that hovered just beyond her reach. The stakes were elevating, and she wondered how fragile their connection would hold when faced with the unraveling of their deepest secrets. Would honesty solidify their bond, or drive a wedge between them, altering their trajectory forever? Emma took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past weeks coalescing as she prepared to share her latest blog post. The screen glowed before her like an invitation, urging her to break the silence surrounding her vulnerabilities, the anxieties that had crept into her life. She wanted to reflect on fear and ambition, the dichotomy that had wrapped itself around her heart. This was her moment of truth, to open up not just about herself, but also about the wild journey she and Jake had shared toward embracing their individual paths. As she leaned back, her mind drifted to their pact. Each week of facing their fears together had transformed them both. She had witnessed Jake easing into vulnerability, sharing snippets of his aspirations, and each genuine word he penned unveiled a hidden layer she hadn't known existed. Together, they navigated a landscape of contradictions, a territory filled with shared bravery and mutual support. The night before, they had both decided to reveal their most authentic selves during a shared writing session, and Emma had pushed Jake to delve deeper. "No more polish," she had urged. "We need to be raw. That's where the real power lies." They set out on that quest hand in hand, and now her own piece was ready for release, a testament to their growth and fear. As her fingers glided over the keyboard, she typed slowly, deliberately pouring her heart into those final phrases. She penned her fears of abandonment and inadequacy, the quiet worry that Jake's ambitions would carry him away from her. With each typed letter, that fear transformed, a butterfly emerging from the cocoon of doubt, taking flight towards acceptance. She shared her hopes for their futures, how she envisioned a world where their dreams could not only coexist, but intertwine in support. When she finally crafted the concluding lines, she felt a virulent surge of catharsis. This was not merely a blog, it was both a repudiation of her past and a celebration of her triumph over fear. It was a letter of love, not just to Jake, but to anyone who might read it and find solace in shared struggles. Emma hit publish, her heart racing in unison with the leap of faith she had just taken. The next day was nourished by the anticipation rippling through her. As she sat at breakfast, she couldn't help but glance at her phone, waiting for notifications, a tangible acknowledgement of the vulnerability she had just bared. Sure enough, responses began pouring in, each validating her exploration of fear and aspiration. Jake arrived at their meeting spot shortly after, his eyes bright with excitement. "Did you post it?" he asked, half bursting with anticipation. "I did," Emma said, pride bubbling within her. She shared the reactions she had received, each comment a pillar of support for her newly founded self. "What's next?" Jake asked, intrigued by her newfound confidence. "I want us to push each other more," Emma replied, her voice steadied by purpose. "Let's hone in on the aspects of our posts that scare us most. Your turn next week. I want you to dive deeper. It's at the edge of discomfort where we will find growth." He nodded, appreciating her initiative, but then hesitated. "What if it shifts our dynamic?" A moment of silence stretched between them, weighted by implications. "If it gets uncomfortable, let's talk it out," Emma suggested. "We're pledging ourselves to honesty, remember? This is about growth, and sometimes growth means navigating some rocky paths." As their cafe sessions continued, Jacob found solace in their shared vulnerability, even through the anxieties and uncertainties that cast shadows over their dreams. With each new piece unveiled and transformed, so too did their relationship. There were moments punctuated by laughter and discovery, supported by the clarity they had forged together. Weeks passed, and Emma had consistently shared her evolving thoughts, deepening her emotional landscape and absorbing positive feedback from not only readers, but within herself as well. Each week, she and Jake fell into a rhythm of writing, growing more comfortable exposing their imperfections without fear of judgment. Emma recognized that transformation was continuously layered. Each blog post opened new avenues for her self-acceptance, while she learned to manage her expectations surrounding Jake's ambitions without allowing anxiety to overshadow the foundation they had rebuilt. When Jake finally unveiled his upcoming post, it was raw and unfiltered. Their conversations unfolded like petals revealing bright colors, a shared vision for both their futures intertwined with dreams and ambitions. Emma felt grateful for every moment of listening, cultivating empathy and trusting the process. With that final blog post released, they decided to celebrate that moment. They went for dinner, where conversations ebbed and flowed, taking new shapes as they ventured into reflections about their aspirations, along with light-hearted anecdotes from their past. Jake leaned in and caught her eye amidst laughter. "I'm proud of you," he said, sincerity threading through his voice. "Likewise, we're both conquering our fears, one post at a time," Emma replied back, with a smile radiating recognition. As a calm settled over them, Emma sensed a sense of completion in her journey. She had transformed from a mother afraid of losing her son to an empowered individual forging her own identity. Clarity washed over her, and for the first time in a long time, she felt solid confidence nestled within. Through their painstaking honesty and vulnerability, they had found a path forward. Emma achieved not just personal and professional growth, but also forged a deepened bond with Jake, allowing both their ambitions to flourish rather than suffocate them. As they walked out of the restaurant, Emma felt as though they weren't just walking into the future. They were embracing a world of possibilities brimming with hope. Each step forward was solid, marked by a mutual understanding that together they could conquer the tides of uncertainty. The present felt different now. Emma had gained not only recognition for her resilience, but finally recognized her own competence. She had sculpted a life that harmonized passion and purpose. As they strolled down the bustling street, with shadows receding behind them, the weightlessness that arose from embracing change enveloped them. Both Emma and Jake had arrived at the realization that their journeys would continuously evolve, but they were prepared to navigate them together, undaunted and unyielding in their shared pursuit of fulfillment. To everyone joining Emma's emotional journey of transformation, it's time to make your mark. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support is crucial. Comment your reactions and theories about this transformation. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans of personal overcoming understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.